I'm making every moment count. About 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit a coffee roasting plant in Colombia, South America. And this plant had a pretty daunting task. At the time, it was tasked with bringing Via instant coffee for Starbucks to the market. And it was a Herculean effort. If you think about launching a brand new product, never been made before, across 12,000 stores around the world on the same week, it's a big deal. So as a manufacturing leader and recognizing the importance of Via Instant Coffee to Starbucks' success, I was really excited to tour the plant. So the president and I began our tour, president of the company and I. We began to walk the plant floor. And I was absolutely amazed. As we walked the floor, he introduced me to every one of hundreds of workers that were in some way, shape, or form involved with producing this Via coffee. And as he introduced me, reached out his hand, shook their hand, stated their name, and told me how many years they'd been working with the company. Wow. And the years of service ranged from months to 30 years. But it was remarkable that this man knew every one of those several hundred people, packing Via sticks into little boxes to be shipped into North America and Asia and Europe for Starbucks. As I interacted with the workers in the operation, they were really excited to tell me as their customer what they were doing to make Via better and to run the plant more well. And I left the plant completely motivated and inspired by just the infectious positive energy and everything that I saw on the floor and the interaction that I had with all these people and the connection that they had with their leader. A couple months later, I had the opportunity to tour one of the world's largest coffee roasting plants. This one happened to be located in eastern Pennsylvania, an American plant. It's about 20 years old, had a few hundred workers in the plant. And this plant had had a sad legacy of cycling into periods of high morale and engagement and low morale and engagement. And with each of those cycles, usually results followed in the facility. I wanted to get out to see the floor. So I made my way from the front office area out to the production floor. And it so happened, as I timed my walk, I was walking counter-current to dozens of people heading from the distribution center to the break room to take their break. And as is my style, I'm pretty engaging. I tried to make eye contact with virtually everybody I passed, and very few people would meet my eye. For the few that did, I'd give them a warm hello or a good morning, and even fewer yet responded my greeting. As I got through the crowd onto the production floor and began to talk with some of the operators on the packaging lines in this plant, I learned that there had been several decisions made recently by managers in the plant that impacted the quality of work life for these folks negatively. And these decisions were made without much input or interaction or consideration, for that matter, seemingly for these people and their circumstances. And then I further learned, much to my disappointment, that there had recently been a rash of interactions between supervisors and packaging machine operators that occurred out of anger. Words were exchanged out of anger or frustration, and things were said that frankly were just mean and not very considerate and thoughtful. And as the day went on, I just felt emotionally drained, and I was discouraged, and suffice to say I was concerned, and particularly concerned because that plant fell under my responsibility at Starbucks. As I reflected on how different those two experiences were, just this high engaging, high morale, positive, infectiously positive environment in South America, and what seemed like the pit of despair in eastern Pennsylvania, what became very clear to me is the key differentiator between those two operations, driving that difference in engagement and morale, was the degree to which the leaders in those facilities made every moment count, and made every moment count for good. And I've had a lot of time to study this over the years. Every moment counts. Every word, every action, every reaction, everything counts, everything matters. And as I reflected on that, I made a personal commitment that I would do my best as a leader and a human being to make every moment count for good. So to lend a little bit of credibility to my discussion today, I thought I'd share a little bit about my background, so you know a little bit about where I'm coming from. I was born a poor cheesehead in Wisconsin, and grew up among pulp mills and cranberries, and got my sights set about going to engineering school. And so I attended engineering school at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and lo and behold, ended up studying specifically paper science and engineering. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree in my family. And in that program, I was very fortunate in my first internship to have the opportunity to work for a person who's very influential on me and decisions I've made subsequently in my career. And specifically, he inspired me to carry right on with my graduate studies. So I finished up in Wisconsin, and I packed my bags, and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I attended the Institute of Paper Science and Technology, which is now part of Georgia Tech, and got my master's degree in engineering. And while in that program, a big company called Procter & Gamble got their hooks in me. So when I graduated with my master's degree, P&G landed me in a plant in Southern California making tissue and towel products. And in paper industry circles, tissue is a nice way of saying toilet paper. So I spent 7 years of engineering school to go make toilet paper for 8 years. and about a year and a half into my career at P&G, somebody thought I'd have an knack for operations. So I started in this engineering role doing technical work, and they thought I'd have a knack for operations. So I made the jump into the operations ranks, and I loved it. I loved the interaction with people and how you'd rally and motivate people to go achieve things that previously seemed unachievable. And I did all right with that. And so I advanced in the organization at P&G over those 8 years. And then love lured me away from Procter & Gamble. My lovely wife, then fiance, and I had been dating long distance, and we'd gotten engaged, and we needed to find a way to get to the same city. And long and the short of it, Procter & Gamble headquartered in Cincinnati. Cincinnati was not in my sights. Seattle was. And Starbucks found out I was on the market, and Starbucks recruited me. So I spent about 14 years with Starbucks in a range of roles, but I had the fortune while there to lead at senior leadership levels virtually every aspect of what we call the supply chain. And the supply chain concerns itself with planning and executing production and distribution to get products to customers and stores. My roles there spanned from leading global shipping or transportation, all the imports and exports for Starbucks around the world, as well as deliveries to stores and customers, to running the manufacturing organization, responsible for 20 plants in a dozen countries around the world and about 1,200 people, to leading planning, where we coordinated all of the inventory that needed to move around in that system across the world to support the stores and our customers. And I spent the last 3 years there leading a group of 75 people who bought all the company's food, beverage, packaging, merchandise, and marketing materials for this footprint of stores across 64 countries. In January, I joined a company called LBP Manufacturing. And LBP is a Chicago-based producer of sustainable and disposable packaging for the food and beverage industry. So you'd see our products if you go into a Starbucks and you see a coffee cup sleeve. LBP makes that for Starbucks around the world. If you go into McDonald's and you order a hamburger and it's in a carton box, LBP makes that product. So our customer base is typically restaurant chains and coffee houses and convenience stores. And I share all of this as just to give you a frame of reference. Over the course of the last 2 decades, I have had the opportunity to manage teams ranging from 1 person to 1,200. And I've had the opportunity to visit literally hundreds of manufacturing plants, distribution centers, and offices around the world. And I've come to conclude that that observation I made when I thought about that plant in Medellin, Colombia, and York, Pennsylvania, that observation I made holds true everywhere that I visited. Companies or operations or plants or distribution centers with a high level of engagement and morale and productivity versus those that have the opposite, the key difference is the degree to which the leaders of those operations make every moment count. I further observed that there are a couple of traits, 4 traits actually, that I think leaders in those well-run, highly engaged, highly motivated operations model and bring to life every day to make sure every moment counts for good. I realize that some of you may be in the business world, some of you may not, some of you may have teams, some of you may not. what I will propose is what I'm about to share is applicable no matter. It's applicable in the workplace, it's applicable at home, and it's applicable among your friendship. So I hope you'll take this lesson to heart. The first trait that people who drive a high level of engagement and morale and motivation demonstrate, from my perspective and my experience, is personal connection. They make it important to connect with people personally. And personal connection can happen in a number of ways. It can happen by meeting people in their workplace. You may have heard the expression, manage by working around. I manage by working around. When I'm in the office, I make it a priority every day to go out and try to connect with everybody on my team in some way, shape, or form, and just have a personal moment. A hello, a good morning, how's it going today, what problem are you solving? Hey, good job last week on this thing that you did. Personal connection can also show up in a more personal touch kind of way. So my signature personal touch is a firm handshake. And interestingly, at both Procter & Gamble and Starbucks, over time I became nicknamed the mayor because I liberally dispersed those handshakes every day, and some people got several a day. And it actually became a bit of a joke sometimes. Folks would laugh and they'd pretend I'd crushed their hand. But the thing is, as much as there was joking about it, frequently I heard how meaningful that simple personal touch, that simple interaction was to those people every day. It was a way to connect in a very personal and simple level. Personal connection can also be as simple but as important as committing someone's name to your memory. Think about a time when you met someone, several months passed, you happen to pass them again, and they immediately look you in the eye, they're excited, and they call you by name. And think about how you felt in that moment. Find ways to commit names to memory. Simple gestures like that go a long way to connect on a personal level. And as a bonus, I challenge you to remember anniversaries or birthdays or a family event that's important. And here's where Outlook can be a great tool, because you can put that stuff in Outlook and it can remember for you and make it easy. So connecting personally is that first trait that I think those who engage and motivate well demonstrate every day. Next is integrity. And when I think of integrity, I think integrity is synonymous with honesty and with trust. And I think leaders and individuals who show up every day and motivate and drive positive engagement and impact model great integrity. They make and meet commitments. And I think making commitments is as important as meeting commitments. They're committal. They're straightforward in their language and their actions. There's no beating around the bush. Information is shared completely, not partially, which removes those potential risks of perception of personal agendas. And importantly, I think integrity is consistency. It's showing up with those behaviors every day the same way, and in consistency, trust will build. The third trait that successful motivators and engagers demonstrate is empathy. Early in my marriage, my wife Heather used to accuse me of not having much empathy. I do think 14 years at Starbucks and being married has generated empathy in me. But empathy is about meeting people where they're at. And I think the key here is to recognize that individual circumstances and motivations play a role in how people will respond to a message or a decision. And the degree to which you take the time to understand those individual circumstances or motivations, the degree to which you understand that and you account for that in your communication and your decisions, probably the more effective you're going to be at inspiring and motivating and engaging those folks. The fourth trait that I think effective motivators, those who impact people for good, demonstrate is inclusiveness. Procter & Gamble, we had an expression called the adult business deal. I really like this expression. And the adult business deal went like this. I as a leader, am going to give you, as one of the employees in my care, as much information as possible, as early as I can possibly give it. And that's so that you have context to make the best possible decisions, and you have context to understand as best as possible decisions that may be getting made, perhaps without your input. And in exchange for that early and transparent access to information, here's the deal: you'll process that professionally and maturely and responsibly, and you won't use that information for personal gain. I think the adult business deal plays out well here. At Starbucks, I had a previous manager who had another great expression with inclusiveness in mind. And he said, it's better to involve and educate people early, and in doing so, you avoid judgment later. Think about a time where you've received a decision and you had no input in the process, and you had no context around that decision, and all you could do was judge the decision that's been made. I think the most effective, most inspiring, most motivating people having the most positive impact find ways to engage people as early as possible and be inclusive and transparent with the sharing of that information and implicate them along the way in the process, the decision, the course of action, or the strategy being set. I think some of the most positively impactful, enduring leaders and individuals I've worked with find a way to make every moment count for good every day. And they do that by establishing personal connections, by modeling integrity, conveying empathy in their interaction with others, and importantly, being inclusive. And I've taken up the challenge to try to model those traits every day. Similarly, I'm going to challenge you all the same. Make every moment count.